This is Carolina This Week. Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning and thanks for joining me for Carolina This Week. Of course, politics took a back seat last week and Irene was definitely in the front seat as far as headlines go. That's why this morning joining me is Randy Webster with Horry County Emergency Management.
Good morning. Yeah.
And Randy, we got lucky.
We did. We really did, Tim. It was real dicey there the first part of the week, but you know, a lot of things came together. Forecasting turned out to be extremely good. And we felt more comfortable then toward the middle and the latter part of the week that we were going to be just fine.
I want to make it clear that we are taping this on Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
We have a few rain bands outside right now. The brunt of it, by the time this show airs, will have come and gone.
Exactly.
Hopefully no damage or very little damage. What should people take away from this Irene experience we've had?
I think the one thing I noticed, a lot of people took it very seriously, working up toward it, especially in the middle of the week, but I was a little bit concerned about the lack of preparation and a lot of the questions that we had about what should I do and where should I go. I'm hoping people now will take this seriously and say, okay, it's time to put those plans in effect.
Those huge storms don't just hit other places. It's possible they could hit here.
We were very fortunate. I mean, this almost took the track of Hazel 54, so and that was a Category 4 storm. And this had a lot of the makings of that type of a storm, which would have been very devastating to us. So, you know, and we're early in the season. This may not be the last one.
Hopefully it is, but as you said, it may not be. So maybe what people should do from this, like you said, learn a lesson, go out and get those supplies now, get the stuff that you think you're going to need from the Home Depots and Lowe's of the world and from the grocery stores. Stock up now. Stock up now.
Know what your plan is going to be. Just discuss amongst your own family. What are you going to do? And take this opportunity and did you do the things you should have done while you've got another second chance now before the next storm may come this way.
Another thing that surprised me, I talked to several people, I don't want to say a lot of people, but at least 3 or 4 people who were panicked, who were ready to evacuate and ready to leave until I said, turn on the news and listen to what our chief meteorologist has to say. People don't seem to, they seem to be knee-jerking.
Well, I think, yeah, and to some degree, but I'm really happy that they really took that approach. In the past, we've had just the opposite. I'm not going anywhere. This isn't going to be serious. And, you know, when's the hurricane party start? So I was really happy to see that people were actually leaning in the right direction. Just the disheartening part was there was parts and pieces there they could have already filled in and with their preparation plans.
I saw on our Facebook page somebody expressed a concern that Georgetown County Schools took the precaution of letting school out early. Is Horry County not on the side of the kids and not on the side of safety? Why did they go to a full day? I assume the school district consults with you. Should they have let school go early?
No, they made the right call, and we were in conversation with them for several days and all the way up into the morning that decision had to be made. And we really just looked at the data and looked at the forecast and felt very comfortable that, you know, the disruption that it can cause, while safety is the first and foremost in everybody's mind, no matter what the situation is, sometimes the disruption, it causes more of a concern than the fact that if they'd have dismissed and we didn't have the reasons to. So every one is different, every call is different, every situation is different, and this time they made the right choice.
When I was driving into work today on Highway 501, and Highway 501 during the summertime on a Friday afternoon is never a pleasant place to be, but usually that's in the direction coming toward the beach. Today I felt a lot of traffic leaving the beach.
We saw a lot of people leaving, a lot of out-of-state plates, and some of that may have been contributed to the fact of where the storm was going. And they want to get home. So there was many reasons, but I think a lot of people took this very seriously, which makes me feel comfortable in that aspect.
Also, as I was sitting in traffic on Highway 501 today, I had to think to myself, had this been an actual evacuation, it could get pretty maddening.
The evacuation is very difficult, very hard, very stressful process for everyone involved, including those trying to get out of harm's way. So there was a lot of decisions that went into the evacuation and the reasons we did not do it. And the biggest reason was we evacuate for storm surge and not for wind and rain. This system, we were going to be on the weaker side of the system. The track was actually pulling off to the east of us. So it did not meet the criteria for actual evacuation for a hurricane.
For a lot of people, this storm will be a lesson. For others, this storm will be a reason to say, I'm not going to leave next time because look what happened. If you live on that northern edge of that, where that eye wall comes ashore, you're probably going to be underwater if you're on the east side of 17 Business.
Right.
And most likely if you're on the side of 17 Bypass. Is that
Right.
correct?
In this particular storm, depending on the path it takes, this one could have caused us some major issues with storm surge flooding all the way to Business and Bypass 17. That's why this evacuation zone is at that far inland, so to speak, from the coast. So, yes, this could have been a very devastating storm by all means.
My wife, after reading some of the reports, and she stays up on all these things, and I have to pass this concern on because it kind of struck me too. We live in Carolina Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina Forest, would they ever, is there a scenario with a hurricane that they would ever be under a mandatory evacuation?
The actual area of Carolina Forest would not be under a mandatory evacuation due to the storm surge itself. There are some concerns as we're working through our new hurricane evacuation plan with the Corps of Engineers and FEMA and the state, that the backwater flooding that can cause by storm surge coming up from the Waccamaw and intercoastal waterways, there are areas in the parts of Carolina Forest that may get some backwater flooding from that. So that's something we're taking into consideration. But right now, there's nothing in the plan for an evacuation of Carolina Forest.
It's just funny, I think, for a lot of people, particularly people maybe from up north or from out west who aren't used to hurricanes, thinking that, man, I live 5 miles from the beach. Shouldn't I be getting out of Dodge?
There are areas along our coast that 5 miles is not far enough away, especially along the tributaries, the waterway, the Waccamaw River, and some of those places. You're going to see a lot of storm surge in some of these cases. They'll be very far inland.
The other concern with a hurricane, of course, is making sure that your home is protected. When do you board up your home? When do you really start kicking that plan into full effect?
The best course of action to take is once you start seeing what's going on, getting the information from the media and from our information from us, you get a sense of what's going to happen. If we're looking toward an evacuation of the area, that means conditions are going to be bad. That's a good time to start thinking, okay, maybe I need to start taking my protect my property actions into place, such as boarding up and all those issues. So this particular storm, we didn't get to that point. We weren't projected to have winds. But if you're seeing winds here 70 miles an hour and higher forecast, and depending on where we are with the track of the storm, that's the time to take those actions.
Hey, there is a wealth of information on our website, carolinalive.com. Go to the tropical page. You'll find links to how to put your kit together, find just what you need to know in case they say Irene or a storm similar to that is coming our way. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the other disaster news from this past week, and that was the earthquake. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. Something that I did not anticipate to be talking about on the show this week is an earthquake. An earthquake centered in Virginia, Mineral, Virginia, 5.8 magnitude. The epicenter in Mineral, Virginia. We felt it the whole way here. A lot of people did. Our reporter Lindsay Thies went out and she talked to some people about what they felt, and then she also talked to an expert from CCU about why we felt it here. Here's a look.
Whether you're young,
They were like, did you feel that?
or old,
All of a sudden, I could feel myself moving, and then at first I thought it was maybe just me.
Other than we was like, nah, it couldn't be.
that didn't matter around 1:50 today. Hundreds in our area felt the Virginia earthquake.
Just kind of felt like you were on a moving platform.
Shook real hard. Shook the whole building.
And then when the books start coming off the shelf, it was just a few of them fell off.
Lynn Metzer was on the 3rd floor of CCU's field house.
And the next thing I knew, it was like, not like a vibration, but just like a wave motion.
All the way in Loris,
I said, did you feel that?
Connie Matzik and her husband were just enjoying their afternoon, watching TV.
And then when I looked away from the television, I was concentrating on myself then. I could feel myself being shook sideways from side to side.
Scientist Paul Gaze says we felt the shake here because the quake was so shallow, but still close to a 6 on the Richter scale.
It's very extreme when you're in it, and it has effects further away. The earthquake is going to be much more intense as you feel it close by, and it's going to be much more diffuse and distributed and lesser as you get further away.
Well, I don't know what's going on with the weather, period, everywhere. You know, it's really been strange that all these occurrences are happening.
Strange, but Gaze says there is no relation between Hurricane Irene and the earthquake. In Conway, Lindsay Thies, News Channel 15.
An earthquake on the
Yes.
East Coast. We feel it the whole way down here, and as Lindsay was just saying, a hurricane out in the Atlantic. No relation, but strange times.
Exactly, and that could have been really a catastrophic event, especially had it been a lot worse in the Northeast where this was, or the Atlantic, mid-Atlantic, because if that had disrupted communication lines and such as that, and with this hurricane coming through now, I can't even imagine what they'd be facing. But we got very lucky with that as well.
As we talked this morning, assuming, as again, we're taping this on Friday afternoon, but assuming Irene keeps its path, people in the Northeast are not going to be happy waking up this morning.
No, not at all, not at all.
The other thing about the earthquake, I thought about, wow, you've really got to be prepared for anything, because we don't live far from a fault line.
We are susceptible to earthquakes in this area, and we've had many of them, smaller ones, but we've had some large ones over the years too.
We'll call you the master of disaster. How do you get ready for a disaster you can't really even plan for?
Well, you know, we talk about that a lot, and it's real simple. If you prepare for a hurricane, you're prepared for any disaster that may come along. The only difference with a hurricane and the other major disasters is you know it's coming. You do have that lead time, but the preparation is the same, except for there'll be no evacuations before the event, but your hurricane kit or your disaster survival kit are one and the same. You'll need the same types of resources that you would need after a hurricane that you would for any disaster.
When you're building homes these days, and not that, and many of us out here are in the building mode right now, but when you're building a home, when you're choosing where to live, should you be taking disasters into consideration, particularly in this area where we've seen wildfires, we've felt earthquakes, and we've definitely seen some tropical weather?
Well, you know, that's true anywhere. Everywhere has its natural disasters and multiple types of natural disaster threats. So the key to it is know what your risks are, know what your vulnerabilities are, and prepare yourself for those, because they don't happen every day, they don't happen very often, but most of the time it's very pleasant, paradise type situation, but when it does happen, you need to be prepared for it.
What's the number one thing? And I know you and Ed go out all over the Grand Strand every year and you talk about hurricane preparedness. What is the one thing, if you don't do anything else, do this one thing? What is the one thing?
The one thing you have to do is have a disaster kit and a family plan. Remember, you're responsible for taking care of you, your family, your pets. No one else is. And in a major disaster, help is going to be a long time away, and maybe days and sometimes weeks away. So just your own preparation plans, take responsibility for you, your family, your pets, and those things. That's the key to the survival of all these natural disasters.
When I was a little boy, I lived through Hurricane David with my parents, and while it was only a Category 1 storm when it came ashore where we lived in Georgia, it knocked out power for a week after the storm. We didn't have fresh water for 2 weeks after the storm, I think it was. Things that you may not think about. Hey, yeah, you got to get out of Dodge and it may put a tree through your roof, but you may not have power or water, and that's something else you have to think about is after the storm.
That's right, and if that same scenario holds true, not only earthquakes and hurricanes, but tornadoes, severe thunderstorms knocks out power, ice storms, severe winter storms, all those events, the outcome is generally the same. It has to do with the creature comforts and them not being there for us. And in many cases, that can be a very life-threatening situation.
All right. Well, Randy Webster, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And you have homework for next week. Go get your family plan together and your disaster kit together.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back.